Hey, Earthlings, welcome, welcome, welcome to another Vegan Time Tunnel. In fact, this is one of the Vegan Time Tunnel interviews. We've done about 6 of those now so far. And so this one's going to be a good one, an old friend of mine from the 80s and still now, hopefully. We'll see at the end of the show. Let me just do a little bit of housekeeping first. As ever, if you're watching on anything other than my YouTube channel, like Facebook, for example, and you want to interact with the guest or the other people chatting, then it's best to be on my YouTube channel rather than Facebook. That's one thing. And then, as always, we welcome comments throughout the show, and we'll put that to the guest as and when. But we'll never kind of make you pay for the comments, so don't worry about that. Some people do, we know. So there's that. So people who are kind of new to this, we're putting together a whole archive of historical events within the animal advocacy movement, which are significant, from around Europe, the States, Britain, Ireland. So I think we're building up to about 70 separate videos now. So everything's going quite well. Let me just have a quick look at the early risers. So we've got Jeremy from the States. Hi, Jeremy. Ronnie. Hi, Ronnie. Welcome. And Philip, as always, from New York, as Wendy would say. Okay, so without any further ado, let's get on with it. Hey, Robin, how are you doing?
Yeah, not bad, thank you.
Very good. So, Robin has been a vegan since 1982. You were saying you went veggie in 1980, Robin?
Yeah, my mother, my brother, and myself all became vegetarian in 1980. And then my mum and myself became vegan in 1982, summer 82. Yeah.
Can you remember the switch over and what caused it?
Yeah, I think so. Well, I was with my girlfriend at the time, walking across Clapham Common. I think it was as early 80, probably late 81, and I'd seen this slogan on a wall that said "Stop Vivisection" or something like that. And I said to my girlfriend that I didn't know, because I wasn't involved in animal issues at all. Oh, so what's vivisection? I didn't actually know. And she told me what it was, and I was like horrified. It's like, oh my God, I can't believe that. That could actually happen. So I then checked out the British Union for the Abolition of Vivisection, BUAV. Went up to their offices in Crane Grove in North London, and then that's how I kind of switched over to the vegan thing.
Yeah, very good. Well, we're going to talk about that in a while. We're getting a bit of an echo. We'll talk about that in a little while, because we want to talk a little bit about when we got the feeling that things changed from a, generally speaking, anti-fur, anti-vivisection movement to a kind of one primarily based on vegan education. And of course, your history is really interesting in the sense that you were one of the pioneers really in the movement of the vegan festival. So we're going to come on to that. But just for people to kind of mark your card a little bit, this is the transcript of Robin's 2010 chat interview on AR Zone. So you go to AR Zone and you'll see it says chat, and you have to look down for the transcripts on that. It seems like a long time ago, that one, Robin.
Long time ago, yes. But the older you get, the more time goes quickly.
I suppose so, yeah. Then above that, you can see it says AR Zone podcasts. And then these are all those. There's quite a few. We need to scroll down to number 14, I think it is, which is you again. So that is 2011, I believe, that one. So that was quite interesting. And one interesting thing about setting this interview up, Robin, was the fact that we couldn't really find any photographs. And so we were kind of struggling, because quite often we will have like a PowerPoint to go along with the talk, but we couldn't find one. And then about half an hour ago, I clicked on this link for some reason, and lo and behold, this came up, which was quite interesting. And if we go to photo gallery, so we've got London Vegan Festival 2009. So we do actually have some photographs now, which is quite good. You were saying, Robin, that because you were running it, see this thing about vegan prisoners, for example, you were saying that means that you probably would have the Animal Liberation Front supporters group and that kind of thing there, whereas, a more mainstream kind of situation, they probably wouldn't have been there, probably. I don't know. But you had a variety of early, as it were, stalls and guests and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, what we wanted to do, I mean, it's not just me, of course, Alison, my wife, we wanted to make the vegan festivals really, it was really an animal rights event, an animal liberation event with everything vegan. So we combined the two, and we certainly wanted to have the Animal Liberation Front supporters group, vegan prisoners support group. We had talks from people like Greg Avery, Mel Broughton, people talking about their vivisection anti-vivisection campaigns, Ronnie Lee. So yeah, we wanted to bring in the whole animal liberation element into a vegan place where everybody could just know that they didn't have to look at ingredients. They could just, everything was going to be vegan basically. So that was perfect, really.
Yeah, very good. This one is 2011. These are the ones where you can actually click on the
weightlifting competitions. Yeah.
Oh, is that where it? Yeah, there's a lot of pictures of that actually. They're all over the place.
We with the vegan festivals, we tried to include everything. We had a poet who played the trumpet at the same time, or something like that. We had massage workshops. We had kirtan chanting. I remember Brenda McNally being particularly keen on the kirtan chanting. We had meditation. We had everything you can. That was really a festival. I mean, there's some events now they call them vegan festivals, but really they're vegan fairs. A festival is something that has everything, and I think we tried to include everything in our events. So yeah, very all inclusive.
So, well, I'm glad to see that we've found some photographs. It's a shame we only did it not that long ago, but never mind. We have to deal with what we've got now. So we had
live music as well. We had several live music acts as well, bands playing and solo artists as well. Yeah.
Jeremy's saying he was born in 1981. So when you went vegan was the same year that Fetid Kingdoms was published by John Bryant. I always like to plug that book. And it was also the same year that Gary Francione went vegan. So you keep some dodgy company, Robin, but there is that. Now, so we've got a few things to talk about. We had a meeting the other day just to check the tech, and we've got a list of things. And I thought I must put them into order, and of course I didn't. So it's all over the place. So we'll just what can go wrong, those kind of things. But I wanted to start off with this fascinating story about the proposal within the Vegan Society about a national vegan festival. And the Vegan Society weren't that keen. So can you go through that story for us, Robin?
We were very fortunate that I got a photographic memory in this respect. So in 1997, at an AGM, someone called a member of the Vegan Society Council, Chris Sutoris, came up with the proposal to have not a particularly big necessarily, but a vegan family orientated vegan event. I think in London. I think that was the plan. And the membership of the Vegan Society voted pretty much unanimously to have that event. So I approached Chris after that, and I said, look, we don't have to make it a small event. why don't we look at it being like a much bigger thing? But yeah, certainly family orientated as well, and all seemed well. But when the vegan society, I mean, you know, when they started thinking about this event that they were going to be expected to organize, they basically weren't very keen. You know, they said, well, we haven't got time to do that. We haven't got time to organize a big event. You know, we're far too busy with our own stuff. So what they did was there was four council members on the Vegan Society. There was myself, Julie Rosenfield, Chris Sotoris, and Terry Bevis, who was the treasurer at the time. So they kind of co-opted us out to organize this event. And fortunately, I had my own group, CARF, Campaign Against Leather and Fur. So the Vegan Society gave us £1,000 to stage this event, which was going to be at Conway Hall in Holborn in London. And all the finances were done through my group CARF. So that was pretty handy having that to fall back on, you know. So yeah, that was the beginning anyway. That was 97. The first festival was actually in 1998.
Yeah,
The National Vegan Festival, it was called.
I suppose £1,000 is quite a lot in those days.
Yeah, it was. It was, but we had such a lot to spend it on, you know. I mean, you know, the hire of the hall comes to quite a lot, and there's also the publicity, you know, all the leaflets. Yeah, I mean, we managed to spend it all, you know.
As you do.
We managed to spend all their money. Yeah. Sorry, carry on.
Well, you got the weird thing about you're able to give the Vegan Society their £1,000 back.
Well, that was interesting, yeah. But something happened in the meantime. You might find this hard to believe, but well, what happened at first? Well, Chris Sotoris, for a start, was living in deepest Wales without a telephone, so it wasn't it wasn't particularly easy to communicate with him. And it seems like not much was happening on organising the stallholders. So Julie brought in her boyfriend Brian Jacobs, and I brought in Alison, my wife Alison, and then there was like pretty much the six of us. So yeah, we organised that first festival. It was very successful. We had about 1,000 people turn up, and we only catered for 300, which was a bit of an issue at the time. Anyway, sorry, I think I'm rambling a bit. Do you want to ask another question, or should I carry on?
Your question, if you want. Yeah, you said cater for 300 and 1,000 turned up, and then I think in the subsequent years you advertised in the Daily Mirror, of all things.
Well, my memory doesn't serve me that well, I'm afraid, but yeah, possibly, yeah. So anyway, the first festival was such a success. You know, it was really good. You know, the way we got so many people, it was so popular, and it was obvious we're going to have another one. So something strange happened. Chris and Terry got together with Julie and said that they wanted me and Alison to not be involved in the second one, which was pretty crazy considering we'd done pretty much most of the work. So we basically took it over. Julie was going to college, didn't want to be involved. So myself and Alison organised the second one, and we had it at the Camden Centre in near Euston, which was a bigger venue, but you know, very expensive. So we didn't stay there for more than a year.
There was about 14 altogether, right?
Sorry?
There was about 14 altogether, and you were involved with most of those, were you?
Sorry, involved with what? My speaker's not very high.
Okay. There was 14 vegan festivals that you were involved with, or at least that you were associated with. Is that right?
Yeah. We organised the festivals over the period of 16 years. We had 1 year where we didn't do one, and on one of those years we did a vegan fete, which was like a country village fete, but in central London, and that was a lot of fun actually. That was really good event actually. Very popular.
Yeah. Okay. If we return to the vegan society and their reluctance to kind of get involved, do you think it's because they? I mean, there's a few things. When I talk to Ronnie in the Still Alive show, we often think back to those days, and the Vegan Society wasn't really seen as a campaign group or even really part of the animal rights movement, which sounds weird nowadays. But do you think it was because they just didn't see the point, or they were busy with the trademark, or it was the finances? What do you reckon?
Well, as I recall, I mean, I was a council member for quite a few years, about 7 years altogether, I think. In all that time, I think the Vegan Society didn't, they had this kind of excuse because they were a charity. They didn't consider themselves to be a campaigning organization. And it was always very frustrating because they seemed to be very keen on having their trademark out there. But yeah, I mean, I personally think they could have done campaigning in a way, in a certain way, uh, and not had to compromise their charity status. But I think, I think that whole thing. Well, in a way, it was good that they did drop the whole idea about organising a vegan festival, because personally, I don't think it would have been. I don't think it would have carried on very well. They wouldn't have, for a start, it wouldn't have been an animal liberation come vegan festival like we did it. So really, it was good, the way it turned out in the end. So I don't know. I suppose I hope I've answered your question about the Vegan Society.
Yeah, it's really interesting that there's a whole series of weird events which have kind of like been a great help to the vegan movement. The first one was in 1940s when the vegetarians refused the vegans. The vegans wanted to have a dairy-free section of the Vegetarian Society, and they said no. Go and do your own thing, which they did, and then you ended up with the formation of the Vegan Society in 1944, which was a great benefit to veganism because it meant that within 10 years they'd worked out vegan philosophy as we kind of know it. And then there was another time when the League Against Cruel Sports fired someone who was making vegan points, and that ended up being a big boost to the vegan community in the sense that veganism is now seen as a protected legal kind of thing. And in some kind of way, as you were just saying, the Vegan Society's reluctance to do what you should see as their own festival was good because you took it over, and it was much more radical than it would have been if they'd have done it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's right. And it's it's interesting the way things work out sometimes. I mean, getting back to the 1999 London, well, it was a National Vegan Festival until 2004, actually. So getting back to the National Vegan Festival, because it was actually the only one in the country at the time. I think it was 5 years before Bristol Vegan Festival came along, after our first one. Yeah, so we went to the Camden Centre. That was very successful, and we were able to give the Vegan Society their £1,000 back. so then we became independent. So really, they did us a favour in effect. They did the movement a favour in effect, actually, the vegan movement, because now there was myself and Alison completely 100% committed to the kind of event that we envisaged, with, like I said earlier, a real true festival. But being able to have people like the Animal Liberation Front Supporters Group, Vegan Prisoner Support Group, people like that, the Vegan Society would never have had. So, turned out for the best, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting because you have a backstory that, for legal reasons, we can't really go into that much. But that would explain why those kind of groups would have been there, and the Vegan Society, wouldn't have been there, which is quite interesting. So we won't delve into that because I know that we can't. Jeremy says, "Well done, Robin. I have total respect for event organizers." And was it? I suppose you were kind of doing it from scratch in those days, Robin. Yeah.
Well, that's and thank you, Jeremy, saying it's a thankless role. It really was. I mean, really, it wasn't any fun organizing those festivals, and the sort of people we had to deal with was, a lot of very rude people, Anyway, don't get me started on that one. I might lose it. Yeah, we had to start from scratch. So it was myself and Alison that came up with the idea for sponsorship, because we thought, well, how are we gonna fund this event? You know, we've given our money to the Vegan Society that we made at the second one. How are we going to do the third one? And I came up with the idea of sponsorship. So, okay, you give us a certain amount of money, you know, like £100, £500, £1,000, whatever, even £20, you know, would take anything. And then we would advertise your company or your organization or your, you know, society or whatever. And it worked really well, you know. So we were getting a lot of money coming in through donations. Through sponsorship. And that, as we know, was carried on into other festivals. So yeah, we had to start from scratch, and it was very, very, very tough. I mean, I was spending 8 months a year actually organizing these events. You know, it's like an incredible amount of work. If you just look at the stall holders, you've got 100 stall holders, and that's just the stall holders. You know, that's major undertaking. Yeah.
And did you? I know that even now there are some problems with vegan festivals because of the fact that, you know, some of the vendors are not entirely vegan, and you know, there's been a couple of times when they brought non-vegan things. I suppose back in the day that might have been even more when you were involved.
We had 100%, you know, policy that everything had to be vegan, and every stall holder had to be vegan. Unfortunately, some people tried to get around that, and we had to pull them up. And you know, we got into some rows with people about that. But that was our 100% policy. We know we weren't going to shift on that. But I know other events, yeah, that has happened, yeah, where there's been compromises made, which you know, is completely wrong.
Yeah, that's right. It is true. Okay, just to fill in the story about the Daily Mirror, I got that actually from the podcast that I advertised before, and you said that you'd advertise in the Daily Mirror, and it had a 1 million person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now you come to it. Yeah. Now you reminded me. Yeah, that's right. We did. We got an incredible. Was it an ad or something? Or was it an article? I can't remember.
Yeah, an advert. Yeah.
An advert. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I don't know how that came about. Now I know I was doing a lot of the publicity, but I don't know how that came about, that mirror thing. But it was amazing. Yeah. I mean, we did have this worry though, because you know it potentially went out to 1 million people. We only had Conway Hall, you know, which was, if you've ever been to Conway Hall in Red Lion Square, it's not that big. And we had this sort of, oh my God, what if 1 million people turn up to the vegan festival? Anyway, thankfully, just enough people came, which was good.
Yeah, just enough.
Yeah. Amazing. The way we look at it, really, you know, yeah, this is advertising a vegan festival, but the word vegan is out there. The word vegan is in a national newspaper, and it's going out to, you know, 1 million people or whatever. And that was what was so important about that ad, I think. You know, the word vegan.
Well, that brings us to an interesting movement issue, which you played a big role in, I think, Robin, which was because in that AI Zone podcast, you made that point that you wanted just to get the word vegan out because, you know, it was kind of like not an unknown word, but it wasn't a much understood word to the extent that it is now even. But Barbara DeGrand, one of the panel of the, you know, the podcast, was saying, she was from the States, saying it was absolutely desperate to try and get vegan literature in those days. And so then we were talking about something that, you know, you've been involved with, which is the kind of switch from kind of veggie and veg fest and vegan festival. And we do know that in the movement, and even to some degree, even now, some people in the movement are still scared of the word vegan.
Yeah, I think in fact, you know, there's still people out there in the general public who think that vegans are like from some kind of other planet, you know, and they think vegan food is something that only vegans eat, you know. And I say, well, do you eat potatoes? Yeah. Do you eat beans? Yeah. Do you eat vegetables? Yeah. Well, then that's vegan food, you know. But there's still so many people out there. I mean, we might think that veganism has gone mainstream. I mean, certainly in comparison to the early 80s or whatever, you know, it has really, you know, boomed. But there's still a lot of people out there that can't relate to the word vegan. I find I do street stalls. I used to before I injured my leg. But I know it's surprising really that not more people are understanding. On the other hand, restaurants and cafes all seem to have vegan options now, and plant milk's massive, isn't it? So yeah, certainly gone out there big time. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think that in terms of the national groups, I think it was the grassroots of the movement, but also the supermarkets who were much more willing to put the word all over the place, vegan all over the place, that proved to them at last that veganism wasn't such a scare word. And I know there is some interesting kind of journals in terms of, food service journals and everything, where there is some suggestion that saying plant-based rather than vegan might be better. But certainly, I still see all over Dublin a lot of companies and brands and supermarkets. They're still seem quite happy to have the word vegan on things, so it can't be harming them too much. Otherwise, they would change it real quick.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I've been looking at products recently, and the word vegan is on the front quite noticeably. So I think there was a little bit of a worry among some producers. They want to put plant-based. I mean, I think plant-based is fine. It's a nice little term. But I think they've become a lot more confident now, and I think they're starting to put the word vegan on much more than they were. So that's it's a good thing. So.
Yeah. Where do you sit with this debate about plant-based versus vegan within the movement? In other words, to describe people who don't necessarily adhere to the philosophy, but they adhere to the diet. What's your take on that?
Well, I think I think it's all good, if people are just dietary plant-based. We can't say dietary vegans because obviously veganism isn't just about diet. But I think it's all good. I mean, there's a very popular restaurant up in London called Mallow, and it's always packed solid with mostly young people. I can say that now. I'm not young anymore, but no, like people in their 20s, and it's absolutely packed solid. It's not a cheap restaurant either. But I would suspect that they're probably mostly plant-based people. It's all good. But yeah, plant-based isn't vegan. Vegan is you don't wear any products made from animals. You don't use any products tested on animals. You don't eat anything from animals. So that's what vegan is. But yeah, plant-based is. There shouldn't be. I know in the movement, a lot of people like arguing and falling out with one another, and doing this one personship thing. But we should be working with it, not against it, really.
I can't believe you said that about the vegan movement. There's never any disputes there. Jeremy is saying I prefer animal-free food as it's animal-centric. I think most species it would be human-centric mindset when they hear vegan or plant-based. I suppose that's an interesting one. Jeremy is very interested in what we could call language precision, I think.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think animal-free food is perfect. I think plant-based doesn't really say what it is. I mean, plant-based actually isn't necessarily even non-animal. I mean, I googled it when the term plant-based first appeared, and it wasn't necessarily animal-free. So yeah, Jeremy, animal-free food. But I can't really see the supermarkets or the big producers using that term, to be honest. They seem to like plant-based, so stuck with it, I think.
Yeah, I agree with that. Animal-free food in supermarkets would sound a bit weird as a label or a big sign, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I don't think it would be a good seller if they put animal-free food on products. I think people now know what plant-based means. I think the assumption is that plant-based means that it's no animal products in it. I think now, maybe not at first, but certainly now, I believe that. Yeah.
Yeah, but we're back to the movement thing about, I mean, like here, Simon's saying people don't eat leather or fur. So plant-based is to describe, the people who are really kind of, I mean, like there are some people in the movement now that would say that veganism is a diet. There is some people who would argue that. And of course, we would push back about that and say, well, it's much more than that. It's a philosophy. It's about justice. And what about vivisection? And what about circuses and all the rest of it? And so I think that's why people say the distinction between plant-based and vegan to describe people, as it were, is quite useful.
I don't see how people can say that plant-based, what did you say, the plant-based is vegan? I mean, the thing is, vegan, the word vegan, was coined in 1944 or thereabouts. And it meant the specific thing, didn't it? It meant you don't use you don't eat anything from animals, you don't wear anything from animals, and you don't use any products tested on animals. That's vegan, isn't it? I mean, plant-based doesn't mean that, does it? Plant-based is a
no, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Which is why sometimes I suppose you could, you could find some utility if people don't want to identify as vegan, but they do want to identify maybe as plant-based. Even going back to the fairs and everything. I mean, was it Animal Aid who did the cruelty-free fairs instead of labeling it vegan? I think you mentioned the other day.
Yeah, but I mean, there's no, vegan and cruelty-free is the same thing, isn't it? Because cruelty-free means there's no cruelty in what in what people are eating, using, or wearing. So, vegan is a word. Yeah, it's a word that's been created. I don't think it matters if it says it's a cruelty-free fair over a vegan fair. Personally, I mean,
you're okay with both. Let's go to CARF. So CARF stands for Campaign Against Leather and Fur. So that presumably came about at the time when there was a big push about fur as well as vivisection, as we've said. So did you do the leather bit as well to make a point?
Well, how that came about, so I met my girlfriend Ros Dede, and we got together and we thought, well, there's been a history of campaigning against the fur trade, but no one seems to be talking about leather. I mean, vegans now, or animal rights people now, might think that it's very strange that these things didn't happen, but really, campaigning against leather in the early 90s or the late 80s or whatever was considered to be a fringe issue. It's like, well, animal rights people would say, well, leather is just a byproduct of the meat industry. You don't want to waste your time campaigning specifically against leather. And when we founded this group, it was Campaign Against Leather and Fur, which very luckily, with an and sign between the leather and fur, actually spelled calf, which was very good. We were actually mocked. We were vilified by some animal rights people. No names mentioned, but somebody called me and Ros pathetic and ridiculous because they said, well, we should be out there campaigning against vivisection. Talking about leather is like ridiculous. And now it's like, well, I mean, me and my brother and Ros got together and we produced the first ever anti-leather leaflet, and the Vegan Society had it produced and paid for it, and it had the Vegan Society's name on it and CARF's name on it and addresses, and that was a major thing. And with that leaflet, all the national organisations started producing their own anti-leather leaflets. They don't now because that seems to have gone by the by, but certainly it became a big thing. But no, in the early days, no, leather was not considered to be a serious issue. Well, and that was in 1991. Sorry, we founded the group in 1989, but tragically Ros was killed in a road accident in 1991. I carried on with it on my own after that.
Yeah, I remember that tragedy. And we did talk the other day, Robin, about the fact that, and this is interesting because on World Vegan Day, I did a 12-hour special, which the BBC had removed from YouTube because I had the temerity of including 8 minutes of carnage, the Simon Amstel mockumentary. So, but part of that was we did a Still Alive with Ronnie Lee, but we also did a time tunnel interview with Wendy McGovern. So that's going to be next week. So I've recovered that part of the thing that was taken down, and that's going to be next week. But in that interview, we were talking about whether we could try to put a date or a reason on why the movement, which is overwhelmingly about fur and sabbing, and in particular vivisection, and then suddenly it became vegan education. So, what's your take on the transformation there, and why, and all that?
Well, I mean, yeah, me and you, Roger, go back a long way, don't we? So we know that, like in the early 80s. I mean, that's when I first got involved in the early 80s, all the way through the 80s, up until towards the end of the 90s. It was pretty much specifically against vivisection, the fur trade, and leather, of course. Joking there. And yeah, I think the advent of the vegan festival started all that off. I mean, I'm not trying to claim that me and Alison got the whole vegan thing going, but I think it did, encourage other people personally. They came to the festivals, they could see, well, maybe this is, and I was always saying, actually, in the mid 90s, I was saying that really, at the end of the day, it's all very well campaigning against things on a single issue basis. And I'm not opposed to single issue campaigns necessarily. But, when somebody becomes a vegan, then that's an umbrella for everything else. That's the way I always saw it. So if you become a vegan, you are automatically against the fur trade and the leather trade and hunting and vivisection and all those other terrible things that go on, against animals automatically. So that's the way I thought is the way to go. That's a quicker way of getting to those other things.
Yeah, I agree with that. Sorry if people are getting a bit of sound interference here, but that's not the one I wanted. So this is interesting from Jeremy. Normalizing vegan is a key win for vegan events. Now we spoke the other day about this idea that veganism goes mainstream or becomes normalized and everything. And it's quite interesting because it's a two-edged sword. You've kind of, we were talking about how the vegan companies get bought out by the multinational ones and this kind of stuff, plant milks and this kind of thing. It's kind of like inevitable, but regrettable in a way. And then the other part of it, I think, I'd be interested in your view about this, Robin, is that when a movement becomes more mainstream, then its radical edge can often get taken away, or even people come into the movement which are opposed to radicalism and they want to go for moderation. Do you have any views on that kind of thing?
I don't know. I think it's kind of a natural process, really. I think, you didn't. I mean, I know I said I couldn't really talk about the animal liberation front. I suppose I can touch on it from a historical point of view. I can't say anything about myself specifically about that, but no, there was a time. That was a time when people went out and caused economic sabotage and rescued animals from animal abuse places. But things shift, don't they? It's a progression, in my opinion. That couldn't go on forever. The state came down like a ton of bricks on the animal liberation movement. And it shifted more towards, the promotion of veganism generally. So I'm not sure if I've answered your question there. I might have forgotten what you said.
No, I think you did a good kind of politician's job of kind of slaloming past it, probably. But no, I mean that's fine. Actually, in relation to what you just said, and again, I know that you're constrained by certain things, but can you talk about Archangel? First of all, explain what that is, your involvement, and what it was set out to do, and everything else. Because I don't think a lot of people will know what it is even.
No, that's right. It's a magazine. I know these days when you got the internet.
Is it made out of paper? Is it a paper?
It was made of paper,
Yeah.
recycled paper. If I can just sweep back a bit, I should have said about CARF, Campaign Against Leather and Fur, the reason why we wanted to include leather, because as far as we were concerned, leather and fur are the same thing. I mean, they're the skin of an animal. One is furry and one is not furry, but at the end of the day, they're both the same thing. They're the skin of the coat, if you like, of an animal. So there was no reason to not include leather but even now, people still think the fur trade is the one to go for, and leather's still a bit of a side issue. Right, jumping forward to what you just said. What was it?
I can't remember my questions. What's the matter with it?
Oh yeah, Archangel. Yeah, sorry. Oh my God, my brain's going. Okay. Well, what happened there was Ronnie and Vivian Smith. They were producing Archangel magazine during the 90s. I think I can't remember exactly. Anyway, during the 80s, I think it was. Forgive me if I'm wrong there, Ronnie. And then there were some editors that I think no names mentioned, but they'd included some right-wing fascist people in the magazine, which I thought I was actually horrified by. I think the magazine was then issue number 6 never actually appeared because the editors actually got arrested and they ended up in prison, I believe. And so there was, the magazine was waiting to be taken over. And I thought, well, I know the best thing to do to make sure that fascists never get a look into the animal rights movement, certainly through Archangel ever again. I'll take it over. And luckily, I was in touch with the person that had all the stuff, or the membership list and everything else. Didn't have any money. Started from scratch again. And so in 1991, I took over Archangel, and myself and my brother, actually, my brother was very much into computers, and he did all the desktop publishing. I did everything else. It was another big job. But we produced Archangel, and we made it really quite different to the original one. I'm not saying better. I'm just saying we made it more, I suppose, user-friendly, for instance. And we were selling it through Virgin Records, through environmental shops. So it became a bit more out there, when we did Archangel. And a bit like the festival, we wanted to include, everything that touched on animal rights, animal liberation, veganism. And so it was very broad-based. And we were very lucky we had some artist friends, Lynn and Maggie Allen, who did the most fantastic covers. But the covers were always kind of had a bit of an animal liberation front kind of theme to them. They were pretty unique, actually. But we also had other artists as well. I can talk
for they were very stylistic. In fact, I've just done an image search for it, but it won't come up. It's you get a lot of other type things, but
you'll get them come up on the American the American ALF website. I can't remember what they're called now. I think you can see the covers on there, and I think you can see some of the content as well.
Yeah, it would have also been part of the Talon conspiracy, but sadly that's gone down now, which is a real shame.
Oh, that's right. That's the one. Yeah. I mean, I had various people who were contributing. I mean, I got a friend, Martin, who did all the Road to Victory section, which was really good. Going through newspapers, finding interesting articles about animals being rescued or whatever. Or the previous editors had something called I don't know, what was it called? Action reports or something. And I created this thing called What the Papers Say, which I thought was really good. So you'd get national and local newspapers, and you would put them in the magazine, basically copy them, put them in the magazine, and then people could see what was going on out there in the press, which I thought was very, very good. We had news from the ALF press office, and we had international news that Ronnie did. So yeah, it was a very good magazine. But by 2000, you know, it was magazines were kind of animal liberation magazines were kind of on the way out, you know. So I handed it over in 2000 to a couple of people, but it didn't really go beyond a few more issues after that.
Yeah, that pesky thing called the internet get in the way. But Ronnie was actually contributing from in prison, wasn't he? I think.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was amazing. I mean, yeah, well done, Ronnie.
I think, if I'm right, I think he had to smuggle the articles out. I don't think he could post them out. Is that right? Do you know that?
I don't really know, actually. I can't remember exactly how we got the. They might have come in a letter. I don't know, actually. I know we got them, but I don't know how we got them. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know
Okay.
that was Ronnie's thing, wasn't it? International news. Yeah.
He had the articles tattooed on his arm and took a photograph or something like that.
I think that's probably what. Well, no, I think when his visitors came to visit him, they just you know had to write it all down from his. I don't know, actually. I can't remember.
All right.
I'm sure Ronnie will be able to tell you, Roger.
Yeah, I'm sure if you're still in the chat, it'll clarify that. Let's go to the vegan campaigns. So I think you said that stopped about 10 years ago, but that was again part of this, you know, bringing in the focus on veganism. Is that right?
Yeah, well, in the early 90s, there was lots of kind of disparate animal rights groups in London, and I got together with a couple of people, and we formed this group called the Animal Rights Coalition London. And as a result of that, a group called London Animal Action came about, which had come also from London Boots Action Group, and it was a very, very, very radical animal rights group. But eventually that collapsed, partly the powers that be, you know, going on. Anyway, don't want to talk about that too much. And out of that became two groups. One was Vegan Campaigns and one was London Animal Rights. And Vegan Campaigns was really great, you know, because we'd have a stall in a different part of London every single month. There'd be food, there'd be like cooked food, savory food, cakes, information, leaflets, recipes, everything you can think of, really. And we got, you know, flooded with people coming up to the stores wanting free food, of course, and cake and stuff. But they were really successful, yeah. And that probably lasted about, I don't know, over 5 years. It was very, very successful. And I think that would be a good thing to happen again. I mean, I personally love doing street stalls. It's actually my favorite way of campaigning is doing street stalls. So.
Yeah, I do know that. Oh, hang about. Let's see what he says. For the first issue, I was allowed to hand articles out on visits. Then they clamped down on me. I could only include them in letters.
Yeah, I think I got them in letters. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks,
Well,
Ronnie.
it doesn't make any sense, does it? If you're allowed to hand them out in visits or letters, it's still the same. They go out, so that's a bit weird, that really. But yeah,
maybe the prison guards wanted to read the news.
Yeah, get an exclusive. Yeah, kind of. Ronnie Lee says. So finally, then, if we were to say that you were pretty instrumental, and I think you were in this development of veganism as a central part. I mean, people call it the moral baseline of the movement. Those kind of terms, right? What's your opinion about the people who say that we've gone too far, and they want a return to pressure campaigns, and they think that there's a big distinction for them between veganism and animal rights, which I don't see, but they do. What's your take on that?
Well, I mean, I can sort of count myself amongst those people actually, because we did the last London Vegan Festival in 2014. It seemed to be like the whole thing then was based around promoting veganism, which I thought was a great thing, and it really was, and it was going mainstream. But I suddenly started thinking, well, hang on a second, what about maybe we should pull back to trying to get, maybe getting something against vivisection again. I mean, I'm not saying I started it or anything like that, but I got in touch with Mel Broughton, who's been doing the Speak campaign for very many years. Amazing, to be carrying on doing that with so few people. But I said to him, well, look, I'm thinking now that, there's so many people, promoting veganism now. I'm thinking I'd like to maybe do something, regarding vivisection. So I founded this group, which is really it's a Facebook group. It's called Grassroots Anti-Vivisection Initiative. And the reason I called it that was because it was to encourage people to take their own initiative to organize protests and not just rely on, me, for instance, running this group. And I think that's been fairly successful because there's a lot of anti-vivisection campaigns now.
And is that still there, Robin?
And that predated Camp Beagle as well. I think that came a couple of years after I started that group. I'm not saying I had anything to do with that, but there's a lot more campaigning against vivisection now than there ever was, for a very long time. Yeah.
Yeah, it's come back. I know. So you said that was a Facebook page. Is that still there?
Yeah, it's on Facebook. Yeah, it's
okay. Do you want to say that? Do you want to say the title again?
It's Grassroots Anti-Vivisection Initiative. It's just for sharing news, really, about what's going on, in the world of vivisection. I've always thought that vivisection was definitely the hardest thing to combat. But it's certainly, very valuable to try to combat it. I don't think it'll ever be combated like it was by the Animal Liberation Front. I think those days seem to have passed by, certainly in this country. But yeah.
Yeah, well, I'd agree with that. Things have changed, not least technology and surveillance and those kind of things. In terms of a lot of vegan education going on, I think Ronnie and I might push back a little bit in the sense that Ronnie's new thing, or Ronnie's thing for several years really, is that it'd be good to get vegan education all the time and everywhere, and that means away from the big cities as much as within the big cities and the suburbs and all the rest of it. And so if you look at it that way, even now there still isn't a great deal of vegan education that could be going on. But my own position is that I think single issue pressure campaigns and vegan education can go together. They can complement each other, and I'm sure that's how you think of it. I think most of the people who are into modern day pressure campaigns incorporate a vegan element, which wasn't there necessarily in the past. And so that is a kind of coming together of these ideas, I think.
Was that a question?
Well, it was a statement that I was inviting you to say, yeah, okay, I get that.
Yeah, well, I think there's a group in London that do anti-PER campaigns every Thursday, every Saturday. They're very, very good, pressure group against all those shops in Bond Street, mostly Canada Goose. And then when they're not doing that, on the other days, they're out there promoting veganism. And certainly there shouldn't be any, those things should automatically come together. I don't think there's much point banging on at one single thing, like if you're not promoting veganism at the same time, because I don't think really you're not going to really get very far. Someone spends all their time just standing outside a lab with a placard, or a banner, and they don't try to promote veganism, then I think it's a shame. I think they should really. I think people really need to get out there and do all of those things.
Yeah, it kind of doesn't make sense nowadays. I think one argument would be that if you promote veganism, then that's going to stop non-vegans getting involved with anti-vivisection, which is an entire debate on its own. Now, I did say that finally we'll talk about Archangel, but I've thought of another one. In fact, I've got a note here because I said the other day that you've kind of seen it all, in the sense that you saw this transformation from the single issues to vegan education, and I wanted to ask you for the last thing is about the importance of the history of the movement, which I think we agree is important. For example, there are a lot of modern day vegans now who say things like the movement was started by people like Gary Yourofsky, which obviously wasn't true. But also, I've seen recently that somebody claimed that the movement was started by AV, Anonymous for the Voiceless, which would mean that the vegan movement started in 2016. And so
Yes.
I think it's the influences that have come to the fore that have kind of almost like invisibilized everything else. Do you think that's true?
You know, people always like to claim to be the ones that started things, don't they? I mean, really, there was campaigns against animal exploitation and cruelty back in the 1800s. You know, when did it start? The modern day animal rights movement, I would say, started about 1975. Forgive me if I'm wrong, but I think that's when it really got going. The foundation of the Animal Liberation Front in '76 was a massive, massive boost against animal exploitation and mass killing, you know, mass murder. I don't know, you know, it's been an ongoing thing, isn't it, for a very, very long time. So no one can really claim that they started it. I think that's quite ridiculous, actually.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I was now just wondering what you made of the modern day influencers kind of age that we're in now. You know, this kind of almost like vegan celebrities, which is a bit weird from our generation's point of view, I think.
Vegan celebrities, I don't think you can't really trust them, can you? That's the thing, you know. They're very much into self-promotion, I think. I tell you what, something though, I have noticed that when I was involved in that anti-fur group in London, I'm not anymore because, like we were talking the other day, I'm old school. You know, I don't want to be told what I can say and what I can chant and where I have to stand and what, you know, I can't do and all that. So I kind of went off on my own and then got together with someone to do a vegan store. But I do find these days that the police, you know, the authorities do tend to have more of a say in the way people act, and you can't do this and you can't do that. And people are a little bit scared, to be honest, of the authorities, I find now. And they don't want to really risk, you know, like in our day, Roger, you know, getting arrested was actually part and parcel of protesting, wasn't it? I mean, I don't think you know, I think when we were, you know, back in the day, we expected to be arrested because we were going out there and not caring what anyone thought or, you know, what the authorities thought. But now people have got very, very nervous and very scared of actually, this is what I've found anyway. I think I'm correct in saying that.
Yeah, that is a very interesting comment because not only did it happen to us a lot, we didn't make a big thing about it really. And I think one of the first people who did was the aforementioned Gary Yourofsky. And he's got his arrest sheet online, the number of times he was arrested, and the number of days he was in prison. But I guarantee, right, that you and I have been arrested more times than he has, and we've also, I know for a fact, spent more time in prison than he did. It's just that it's got a different thing now. We don't kind of use that for you know, fame or whatever, right?
Yeah, that's an interesting point, Roger, because I have, you know, I think with the advent of Facebook in particular, there's so much emphasis on getting people's pictures on Facebook. You know, here's me holding this banner, here's me. Well, you know, in our day we had cameras, you know, and you didn't really, you could, I mean, you took pictures of the shop or you took pictures of the protest. You don't take pictures of yourself and put them on Facebook. But I think there's this, yeah, like you say, some people really do like to go on about, oh, I've been in prison, I did such and such and such and such. To me, that's just part and parcel of campaigning. You know, whether we went to prison or not, you know, and both me and you did go to prison, you know, so, but we don't go on about it. We don't feel like we need to go and shout about it, you know, and I think this is a very bad way it's gone, actually. I think Facebook's got a lot to do with that. It's very me kind of thing. Sorry if I'm being a bit out of turn there, but that's what I think.
No, absolutely. I wanted to end with us both being boring old farts, and I think we've probably achieved that, Robin. Now,
maybe.
what I'd like to say also, it's been great catching up with you because we've kind of lost contact the last few years. But I mean, obviously, we were much
I've seen you on Facebook.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, but it's been great talking to you again, and maybe we can do it some other time if we can think of anything to say. But
maybe we'll talk about the ALF next time. Yeah, when all this is over.
Oh, when you're able to. Yeah, when all that. Yeah, okay.
I'm just going to say to the people who are listening, the reason why I can't talk about anything to do with the Animal Liberation Front is because I'm part of an inquiry, a public inquiry, which was initiated by Theresa May. And I don't personally think it's a good thing, but it's happening. It's got to happen. It's got to have a conclusion. So I'm not allowed legally to say anything about it from my own perspective. So if I do, I might get into serious trouble. So, but you know, this is going to be over. This is going to be over by next autumn, hopefully, possibly. So maybe we can hit on that subject another time.
Yeah, you'll come back in about a year's time and tell us all about the things that you weren't allowed to talk about.
Well, it's supposed to be completely over and done with, and it's been going on for well over 10 years now, since it was first initiated. It's supposed to be over by 2026. November 2026. So maybe I'll catch up with you in 2027.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's leave it there because I don't want you to say anything that you're not supposed to. So I'd like to say thank you once again to Robin Lane for being the Vegan Time Tunnel interviewee at this time. I'd like to thank everybody that has tuned in and asked some questions and made some points. And obviously, a lot of people will see this on the recording. So thanks a lot, Robin. If you just sit there for a second, we'll finish this and we can say goodbye to each other. So thanks a lot, everybody. We'll see you again on a different and another Vegan Time Tunnel.